Ever since middle school, I've been hearing a clicking or tapping noise before I fall asleep. It sounds as if someone or something is tapping their nail quickly and repeatedly against a mirror or glass, as if it wanted to get my attention. I thought, no big deal, but as this occurred every night, I noticed patterns. First it was the tapping at 1 a.m., then next it was either one of two things. If I woke up, I'd be able to see my room, but I had no control of my body. My arms, legs, body, head were stuck to my bed as if 3,000 tons were on top of me. No matter how hard I tried, it was impossible to move. I couldn't speak either. I knew what I wanted to say, to scream for help, but I had no control of my mouth. In my head, I was panicking, screaming, but anyone who walked in just walked out because they thought I was asleep when I am looking right at them. Occasionally, every night after the tapping, I'd freeze up on the sound of dragging feet sliding inch by inch toward my bed. Every inch gets louder and colder. Only once I was brave enough to look, and in that second I saw it. I turned down into my pillow right away. By my door was a woman with pale skin, long black hair, black eyes like black marbles, and a white plain gown hanging on her body. She saw me see her, but the noise was getting closer. I dared to look, and there she was on her knees leaning on the corner of my bed, closest to the door, head resting on my bed, arms stretched toward me. Thank God I had a king bed. I was so terrified I started praying an Islamic prayer, the only one I knew. Then I asked to get rid of what was there and to help me fall asleep. It worked that night. Other nights, I just leave the lights on or I don't sleep at all.
I have a few stories, some of which my parents told me recently, but this one happened to me personally. All of this happened about 20 years ago when I was around 10 years old. I lived in a house where a few things happened, but when I told my parents about it, they would just tell me I had an overactive imagination. And this is until quite recently as well, until I had a talk with my mother about it. But anyway, once the front door unlocked itself and slammed into the wall hard enough to leave a dent. The lock was heavy and made a loud thunk whenever you unlocked it. And before that door was a solarium, i.e. 2 doors, and that door was still closed, so there was no wind. Another time at night, I went to the bathroom and heard someone constantly call, whispering it into my ear. Someone knocked at my bedroom door repeatedly. It could have been my dad, who sleepwalks, but I was never able to explain the same knocking at my window when my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. All of this falls short though to the more notable event. This was during a summer night when I woke up to what I can only describe as a low constant humming, like someone singing a song. It was always the same 2 notes, low and high, on and on. The sound was distorted with what I can only describe as static. It was as though it was an old record being played through a very old gramophone. I was facing the wall when I heard this, and I figured my mother had her small radio on in the next room. I was about to get up and get ready to tell her to tone it down, not really thinking about it. So, I turned and froze, because on the side of my bed was a tall shadow figure. My room was dark, but the street lights peered in, so there was some light, except this shadow outright sucked the light like a black hole. One side of the figure seemed in disarray, like its hair was sticking out all over the place. Today I think that perhaps it was a hat. But anyway, and at the same time, it was smooth. It didn't seem to move, and just stared down at me. I hadn't truly been frightened before, but this, I remember, had me in terrible fear. I faced the wall back and pulled the covers over my head. Eventually the humming died down and slowly tuned out like someone turning down the volume until it was complete silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night and stayed up trembling under my covers until my mother came into my room in the morning to tell me to get up for summer camp. I was so terrified before then that even as the sunlight came early in the morning, I stayed under the covers. I didn't want to call my parents because I was afraid that this thing would answer instead of them. After that, nothing much happened. I heard the humming noise once a year after, but it was very faint and there was no figure to go along with it. We moved out of this house when I was 12 years old. Today I'm 30. My grandparents are still alive and have always actually lived beside that old house. They have a large bay window that looks right onto that house. We live fairly far, so I only visit them about twice a year. And we sleep there a few days. And every time I sleep there, I dream of something looking into my grandparents' home through what used to be my father's window. Or that I'm in the house and someone is trying to talk to me. Or that I'm running, fleeing from someone or something unknown. Recently, I told my mother about it, and how they told me that I'd been dreaming, when to this day, I'm adamant that I was not asleep and I saw that shadow figure by my bed. She laughed and said, "Oh, I believe you." I was dumbstruck and asked her why she didn't tell me back then. And she added, "Well, how do you tell a 10-year-old that yes, she did encounter a ghost spirit without scaring them even more?"
This event happened about 8 years ago. I was 9 at the time, and I was visiting my family in Pennsylvania for winter break. Most of them live in a small town near the Pocono Mountains, where there are vast amounts of 100-year-old homes and such. My aunt's house was one of those old homes. Her house wasn't creepy though, it was nice and homey, but her attic frightened me to no end. Anyway, my cousin, who was 6 at the time, and I shared the guest room on the 2nd floor. The guest room had a door that led to the attic, so I was obviously nervous to sleep in there. 2 days into our vacation, I noticed something off about my cousin. Normally she was full of energy, but in those 2 days she was unusually sleepy and would frequently take naps in the daytime. It was the 3rd night of our vacation, and my mother was tucking me and my cousin in bed. While she was tucking us in, my cousin turned to her and said, "Could you please leave the lights on? I don't want the attic door to open tonight. I want to sleep." The moment she said that, chills went down my spine. I'm feeling chills right now, thinking back at that moment. My mother smiled and said that it was just an angel saying hello to us. She did not listen to my cousin's request. My mother is an idiot, you will see. After 10 minutes of laying there in darkness, my cousin turned to me and whispered, "We should help the angel." Now, my cousin and I were brought up in a Catholic family, and our family always talked about how angels exist, so I was pretty excited at the thought of actually meeting an angel. But then again, this was a creepy attic, so I was a bit hesitant. After much deliberation, my cousin and I decided to unlock the hatch and open the attic door. The attic was pretty damn dark, but there was a light switch we could turn on, so we did just that. As we were walking up the stairs to the attic, I was beginning to feel as if someone was watching us, and I wanted to leave, but my cousin insisted we press on. I will never forget what happened next. As soon as we reached the top of the stairs, my cousin yelled, "I see the angel!" She was pointing at the light coming through the attic window. "That's just the light from outside," I said. As soon as I finished my sentence, I saw something black move from the corner of my eye. As soon as I turned my head, I felt a pair of strong hands push me back, and before I knew it, I was tumbling down the stairs. I heard my cousin scream, but she was interrupted by something, and next thing you know, she too tumbled down the stairs. My mother and aunt came rushing in the room, and for the rest of the night, they were scolding us with all their might. They also closed and locked the attic door. During breakfast the next day, my cousin said she couldn't sleep at all last night, not only because of being pushed down the stairs, but because she woke up at 3 in the morning with the door wide open.
In 2007, I briefly separated from my husband. He had serious drug issues, and I got tired of the stress and lying. A friend of mine was moving to Wisconsin, and he offered to help me get out of Florida. I had 3 teenage kids who were also ready to start a new life, so I took him up on his offer. I had a small car and signed it over to my husband because I couldn't get it to Green Bay. We left in mid-August and arrived in Green Bay 17 hours later. My friend had rented a home for us and we settled in. It was in a perfect neighborhood and we could not be happier. One day in September, my kids went to the park that was across at the end of the street. I was home alone, just enjoying my new life. I had the front door open and the storm door closed and locked. There was a knock at the door. As I turned from the kitchen, I took a few steps towards the door, and the strongest feeling of doom overcame me. I was filled with terror. I stopped for a moment in my tracks. Another knock came from the door, and I found myself suddenly standing in front of it. Standing on the top step were 2 boys, maybe 12 or 13. The terror inside me was so strong I wanted to vomit. I was shaking when I began to speak, but one of the boys spoke first.
"Please, miss, can you let us in? We need to use your phone."
The fear was palpable, but I answered, "Don't you guys have a phone?" They both turned to each other, not saying a word. When the boy spoke, changing the question matter.
"Please, miss, my brother needs to use your bathroom. We won't hurt you. You don't have to worry. Please give us permission to come in."
I said, "No, I don't think so. There's a gas station round the next corner." The boy's head tilted upwards and his eyes were just 2 deep, dark pools. Soulless. The other boy also looked at me.
"Miss, we need to come in now. Let us in."
I said no. I slammed the door shut and locked the knob, the chain, and the deadbolt. I was shaking like I had been in a very cold room. I looked out the peephole and they were both looking at the door. The one boy kept saying,
"Please let us in. We're cold."
"How can they be cold? It's 80 degrees outside," I yelled through the door. "Go away. I'm going to call the police." I looked out and they stood there, and only stepped off the stairs when my boys came walking up the sidewalk. I watched as the boys got up to the end of the walkway and turned in the opposite direction of which my boys were coming. They ran up the door and were surprised to find it locked. I carefully unlocked it and hurried them in and looked behind them. They asked me who those kids were, and I told them they were just some kids selling candy for their school. After that day, I tried to stay aware of what's around me. All I know is that I experienced something out of a movie. It traumatized me, and I always sleep with the lights on. I didn't tell my kids until my youngest, a girl, had graduated high school. My oldest son said that the moment they had stepped onto the sidewalk where our house was, he felt a weird feeling in the pit of his stomach. He also admitted that he had seen both of them down on the walking trail, but never again. Every time I think of this, I get sick.
To set the scene, it was early January of 2012, and I was hanging out with 5 of my military buddies, Kenny, James, Dino, Warren, and Milton. I was celebrating that I was finally leaving operational duty and getting stationed closer to home. We had a few beers in my barracks room, and Kenny asked if we could use my Ouija board. I knew how to use one, well, mostly, and I said sure. I brought it out from my closet and set it up on a makeshift table. I told them in order to use it, you have to take it seriously and do not joke. Of course, no one listened and we went on with the board. I started to pray to Saint Michael for protection, and Milton laughed, stating, "I don't believe in God and this thing won't work." A very large mistake on his part. "Is there anyone with us tonight?" "Yes." "Is it just you?" "Yes." "Are you a good or evil spirit?" "No." "Spirit, are you good or evil?" It responded good with no hesitation. I started to get an uneasy feeling, but I went on with it. "What is your name?" It spelt Milton. At this point, everyone thought my friend Milton was joking around, but he had the look of intrigue on his face. He then asked if he can communicate with the spirit, and of course I let him. "Are you related to me?" "Yes." "Are you my grandfather?" "Yes." "Why are you here?" The planchette began to move rapidly in a circle on the board and immediately stopped in front of Milton. My friends were scared at this point, and I had the feeling of nausea and dread come over me. I knew it was an evil spirit and immediately took over the board. "Goodbye, spirit. We no longer wish to talk to you." It immediately moved to no. "Leave, spirit." "Goodbye." The sense of nausea and dread lifted from the room and everyone seemed fine. We then decided to contact another spirit and see where it would take us. I was about to start when Milton decided to ask the questions. "Is anyone here with us?" It moved to say yes and said hello. "What is your name?" LOC. Then it moved to the center of the board and stopped, pointing at Milton. "Are you an evil spirit?"
"Yes."
And it started to spell its name again, over and over. "Who are you?" LOC repeated over and over. "Goodbye, spirit." It moved to say no. Milton then jumped up from his seat and yelled, "Holy shit!" He ran out of my barracks room and we chased after him. He said it felt like someone touched him and it felt like a red-hot poker. We checked him out and he didn't have any marks or burns. We put the board away and had a drink or two. We calmed down and started to relax, but Milton started to act different. He had no emotion on his face and his eyes were blank. He then tried to get the Ouija board and I stopped him. This is where everything went bad. Milton forced me to the wall, and in that moment, he looked as if he was going to kill me. I was terrified because I knew that it wasn't Milton doing this. Out of an unknown thought, I grabbed my cross from around my neck and placed it on his head. I began to pray to the 4 angels and Milton's body went limp. He hit the ground. After several seconds, he woke up screaming and crying, asking if we drugged him. At this point, my buddies were scared out of their minds and couldn't explain what happened. After we got Milton to calm down, we told him what happened and he was at a loss of words. After that happened, I felt physically and mentally drained. I was, in terms, dead tired for about 3 days after that happened. From what I know, nothing has happened to Milton since then, and he is now a firm believer in God. After talking this over with my pastor and one of my close friends who's had a similar experience, they believe the shadow being that has been following may have influenced Milton. Hey guys, thank you all for watching my video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So, as always, I want to give a big thank you to Mortis Media for joining me on my Collab Tuesdays. Thank you so much, man, for joining me, and guys, if you haven't, please check out Mortis Media's channel. I definitely think you guys will enjoy his content just as much as I do. So guys, how's everybody been lately? I feel like it's been forever since I uploaded a video. I guess this weekend was pretty long. Well, for me it was. I've been playing Dark Souls 3 like the entire weekend, and I think even the weekend before that. I'm not gonna lie, there should be some horror stories about that game. I wonder if there was like, if there's any horror stories about like some dude just getting so mad he picked up the controller, threw it at the screen. I was very close to doing that. I know you guys probably don't care if I'm talking about this, but if anybody has been on that one boss, the Nameless King, oh my god, so annoying. That boss, oof, god, I don't really scream that much at video games or yell that much, but, well, man, that game brought me very, very close to doing it. But anyways, guys, look forward to Friday's video. I actually have a really cool Friday's video for you guys. It's actually going to be another collaboration video. Who will be in it, though? That'll be a surprise to you guys when Friday hits. So as always, guys, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.